Hi, everybody. We'll get started in a minute. Just make sure that you just stay on mute. We might be able to have opportunities for people to unmute and ask questions, but you can also put questions in the chat. So if you want to just drop a hello in the chat and let us know where you're calling in from, that would be amazing. I don't want any note takers, so don't admit any note takers, please, Michelle. All right. We're going to give it another minute so people can join us right from the beginning. You guys just jumped on, just let us know where you're calling in from in the chat, and we'll get started here in a minute. All right. All right. We'll probably have more people joining us as we start, but I'm going to get started. First of all, thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Rebecca Flick. I'm the Chief External Affairs Officer for Resolve, the National Infertility and Family Building Association. I have been with the organization now for 21 years, and I am really excited to bring this program. I think it's a long time coming. Um, I think it's the right time. We have got a lot of momentum in our advocacy movement, and we have a long history of doing this work. And we just really are at a point where the more voices, the better. And we really want men to feel as empowered as women in this community to speak up and to fight for their right to build a family. And so this was no better opportunity than our month of action. So if you're unfamiliar with our month of action, we are now more than halfway through it, and that is a May long campaign where we're giving our advocates a variety of ways to take part in advocacy, everything from contacting your lawmakers, viewing our action alert system, submitting op-eds to your local newspaper. I want to give a special plug to something happening this Thursday. We're doing our very first phone bank. So you'll register for the phone bank, you'll hop on. To a brief webinar explaining the technology. Thank you, Ben. And then you will go through a process of connecting with voters so they learn about our issues and they are encouraged to contact their lawmakers. So we're really excited to start that. If you haven't registered, please do. It's free. All of our activities this month, there's no costs. There's just, sign-ups. We have an easy way to share information online. That's one of the fastest ways we can grow this movement if people are sharing what we do online. So thank you for taking part in tonight's webinar. This is our third webinar of the month. And I think maybe because I was in charge of it, it's the most important one. So we're going to get started. Brief overview of who Resolve is if you're unfamiliar with us, or maybe like you've heard your partner talk about us, or maybe your partner's in a support group, but we are the oldest and largest nonprofit advocacy group for the patient voice for people facing infertility and family building challenges. We've been around since 1974. We were founded by Barbara Eck, at her kitchen table when she started her first support group. We now have extended that support group tradition, and we have people, including we have men's support groups, men only, around the country, and have been doing so since the first one in 1974. We really started digging into our advocacy role about 22 years ago when the board decided to move from our original headquarters in Massachusetts down to Washington, D.C. area so we could be closer to the federal government and we could work on policy issues. And the way we look at our issues is that we believe that anyone challenged in building their family should have access to any and all family building options. And we do that in a variety of ways. We work on policy changes at the federal level. We work on policy changes like insurance laws at the state level. Um, we fight bad legislation. A lot of people are probably surprised to know that there are actually a lot of state legislatures working against people who want to build their family. And we fight against those. And then we also have a coverage at work program. And that is where we mentor and train people to talk to their employers to ask for better family building benefits. So all of our policy and advocacy work is done in those three areas. And then we also build awareness. And awareness, you're going to hear from one of our speakers tonight. Awareness is almost the start of advocacy, right? And so we host National Fertility Awareness Week at the end of April every year, but we're doing awareness work all year long. We have patients just like all of you. We call it patient community. I know that not everyone is a patient at this moment, but we encourage and train them to talk to the media. So we're constantly doing awareness work year round. So again, I'm excited to bring this program to life. Just a couple housekeeping. Please keep yourself on mute. We're hoping that we get to move through things quickly so we can have a Q&A. If you have a question that pops into your head, please put it in the chat. We're here to answer those throughout the evening. And also a little bit of content warning. Our speakers are going to be very open and honest about their infertility and family building journey, and there will be mentions of pregnancy. There could be mentions of loss and parenting after infertility. So I just want everyone to be aware that some of the content could be upsetting depending on where you are in your family building journey. But these guys are here to share and be vulnerable and to also inspire. So without further ado, I'm going to do some quick introductions. I'm going to start with Ben Head. He is the founder of Men for Choice. He'll talk a little bit about their mission, but we have partnered on a couple of things with Men for Choice and really understanding the intersection between our issues in the family building space and the overall reproductive rights movement and reproductive health movement. So we're happy to have Ben here. Joe Cody, a longtime Resolve advocate, and he was the 2025 Hope Award recipient for advocacy, and he's a fertility policy expert, and we're really happy to have him here. Jeremy Mackey is a Resolve fundraiser, and he hosts a golf tournament in Ohio and raises awareness in his local community. And like I said before, awareness is such a key part of advocacy. So we're really happy that Jeremy's here. And last but certainly not least, because I've known him probably the longest of all of our panelists, but William Patterson, he's the Director of Public Affairs for the PCOS Challenge nonprofit. You're a national advocacy trainer as well. I know the PCOS community has had a very, very busy week last week with a recent name change to the diagnosis. So your advocacy in that area, William, is very appreciated. And I know that name change comes with a lot of complications. So we appreciate your time being here tonight because you guys are quite busy. So let me just look at my notes. All right, so we're going to jump right in. So I'd love for the panelists to take themselves off mute if you're able to. Before I flip it over to Ben officially, I just want to kind of give you guys an opportunity to talk a little bit about your experience navigating building your family. And Joe, I'll start with you. And if you can, like, what did it feel like when you and your wife were facing your infertility diagnosis? How did you navigate that?
Yeah. So hi everyone, it's fantastic to be here. And a little bit of background about our journey. So in 2016, my wife was diagnosed with infertility, and that set off a nearly 4-year IVF journey. And going into that process, I thought that probably naively that we would be well equipped to be able to handle that. And part of it is because of my background. I worked on Capitol Hill and in health policy for, at that point, close to 15 years. So navigating insurance and complex situations was something that I did on a daily basis. And so I felt that if anyone was able to handle a lot of the non-medical aspects of the journey, that I would be well equipped to do so. And I kind of took on that role through our infertility journey, knowing that there was so much that was going to fall on my wife as we went through that process. But the reality was I was not prepared. I don't think anyone can ever be prepared for the complexity, the emotions, the physical and emotional tolls that infertility has on you, your spouse, partner relationships. As you go through this, and a lot of the men who are here, probably, if you've gone through this journey or are going through it, recognize that there's a feeling of helplessness that you have often through that journey. You want to do everything you can to help support your spouse, but there are some things you just physically cannot do sometimes. If I could take those shots for her, I would have done that, but that is not what is possible, unfortunately, through that process. So we really felt that, my role could be how much of the administrative stuff can I do? Can I stay on the phone for 30 minutes with with the insurance company if they're denying a prior authorization, or if the medication has changed and we need to make sure the drug is ordered on time so that we have enough for our upcoming dosage and protocol and all those things. And so just trying to do our best throughout the process, but the reality was, until I talked to a lot of other people in the space, I felt completely alone. And it took almost a year, I think, for us to really kind of start to open up and talk about our journey, because there is a stigma associated with it. Even though it wasn't male factor in our case, I felt that there was, something that we did not have as a couple, and that's really hard for people to accept through that process. But through Resolve and through other organizations and other people that I've met through this, I realized that one, we're not alone, and two, there is actually help and community and resources out there for you.
Thanks, Joe. William, is that kind of similar to your journey as well? And but you ended it by starting a nonprofit with your amazing wife. So
Yes. So, well, I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So, I actually started in the business and finance world, and Sasha, who's my wife, she's the founder and executive director of PCOS Challenge, the National Polycystic Ovary Syndrome Association. And she got diagnosed back in 2008. She had irregular cycles. We presented to her OBGYN, who pretty much dismissed her. And she decided, after researching that there were millions of other women who were going through this, and she decided to start this nonprofit. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, if you could help start the next American Diabetes Association, next American Cancer Society, would you do it?" I said, "Of course." And then we went to work on building PCOS Challenge. So for those who don't know, again, PCOS, it has gotten a recent name change, but I'll call it PCOS just to um, so that people don't get confused with different acronyms. But it's one of the leading causes of infertility in women. And so we've been working for nearly 17 years, helping families with PCOS find that resolution and to build their families. We've been doing advocacy for nearly a decade on Capitol Hill, and we started our attempt at a family, fairly late. Sasha, really wasn't sure, that we were going to go there. Then we decided, and with PCOS, again, PCOS also is one of the leading causes of pregnancy complications in women as well. So that was another complicating factor as we started to pursue this. Again, cost was a big deal. In the nonprofit world, there's not a lot there in terms of resources. So we had to kind of figure that out. We were fortunate to, find some different grant opportunities that really helped us along the way. But it was also rough being in this space and knowing as much as we do. So there were a lot of professionals who weren't as knowledgeable as they should have been around this issue and around specifically dealing with a person with PCOS. So that was hard. Sasha went through a lot of complications through the pregnancy. We were fortunate enough to, again, go through IVF and find a resolution, but it was a rough journey. And I was as supportive as I could be, just in general, just having a lot of health issues, always being there in hospital rooms with her. And I can just tell you, I know a lot of you on this call, the men who are there. I know you go through it, and you're like Joe said, if you could take the shots, you would take the shots. And for those who do have partners, I would encourage you to continue to engage with them. They definitely want to be there with you. They want to support you through this, and they want to be on the hill with you. And just giving them that encouragement to come there and to advocate through all the different channels that Resolve provides. So thank you again, Resolve, for the opportunity to be here as well.
Oh, thank you. Jeremy, you are of the panelists, the newest to the Resolve community. We've gotten to know you a little bit through your golf tournaments and would love to learn a little bit more about your story. I know you're also new to parenthood and very tired, so we will forgive you for that, of course, but also really excited to learn more about how you've brought kind of advocacy through awareness to your community.
Absolutely. First off, just thank you, Rebecca and Resolve, for having me here tonight. Truly means a lot to be surrounded by a group of men who are willing to show up, support one another, and talk about something that isn't easy to talk about. First off, just to all the men out there that are not parents yet, I'm not going to give you a speech about how I understand what you're going through since I've been there or that I know other people that have gone through this. Trust me, we both know that doesn't make us feel better. I know I can personally say that I understood where people were coming from and I appreciated it, but it never made it better. But I'm simply here to say, like, I see you and I'm always here thinking about everybody, no matter if we're strangers or not, you're always on my mind. And so, like, our story, I want it to be an inspiration for others because it is absolutely difficult. Our backstory is my wife Emma and we started this journey about 3.5 years ago. Had two failed cycles, a miscarriage. After Emma was diagnosed with endometriosis after a year of trying and not succeeding, and the doctors gave her chances about 9%, which caused definitely a long, frustrating road, and at times was very lonely. For me personally, there was a stretch for about a year and a half where I was in a pretty dark place. Like the gentlemen on here have said, I too felt helpless. I felt like I was failing as a partner. Uh, the one thing I wanted most was to take the pain away from my wife, to show her that it wasn't her fault because it absolutely wasn't. But no matter what I did or say, it unfortunately didn't feel like it was enough. She always blamed herself. And that's a tough place as a man. We want to fix things, we want to protect. When we can't, sorry, it really messes with you. And at some point, I realized I had a choice. I could just stay there stuck and looking at what everybody else was having and having children, or wondering why others were getting pregnant and we couldn't. We thought we were doing everything the right way. Um, or I could try to put that my energy into something positive for my wife, for myself, and maybe even for others going through the same thing. That's where we got the idea for Golf for IVF, which is just an outing that we raise money and all proceeds go directly to Resolve. I'll be honest, when I started this, I didn't start this with some big vision. I don't have any background in fundraising. My background's in sales, which I knew it could help me sell because of it, the personal of what we've been through. But I just really didn't know, and at the time, I was really just focused on my wife and trying to be there for her. I didn't know much about the broader IVF community, and I hadn't heard much about Resolve. But as I started doing more research and talking with other families going through IVF, I realized how many people were fighting the same battle quietly. That's when I knew I wanted to do something bigger than just us. And along the way, I had the chance to connect with Cindy Hollister from Resolve. I can't say enough about how much she's helped me, from the ideas to the website that she helped me with, to just believing in what we were trying to do. And she played a huge role in getting that off the ground. And like I said, no, I had zero background in fundraising. I had no idea what I was doing. I just remember thinking, are people even going to show up? Are we going to raise any money at all? And I had zero idea on how much money we could actually raise. And then something incredible happened. People showed up. We sold out the golf outing, 100 golfers, I believe 30 sponsors, and we raised a little over $21,000 for Resolve. And that just taught me that when you truly believe in something and you're willing to put yourself out there, you can do pretty amazing things. But more importantly, it showed me that we're not alone in this. There are so many people who care, so many people who understand, and so many people who are willing to support you on this journey, even if they haven't gone through it themselves. We just actually had our second annual outing here. We always do it. We try to do it the IVF week. So we had it on the 25th. And then my wife and I were able to actually introduce to everybody there our baby girl, Finley, who was born on March 8th. Um, so I know these days can be hard, but please know you're not alone. So for everyone in here, just leave you with this. Just be there for your partner. Even when you feel like you don't have the right words, just show up, listen, support, because they do need us more than we even realize. And if you are ever struggling or just need somebody to talk to, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. You don't have to go through this alone. Like I said from the start, I see you, and I'm definitely always thinking of you. Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That was amazing, and loved learning even more about your story and getting to know you more. Ben, that's a tough one to follow, but I'm gonna flip it to you so that we can learn more about um, Men for Choice and the work that you're doing, and then also, I think this conversation is really, we want to break down the barriers that men feel when they're thinking about getting involved in advocacy, and that's why we went to you guys to partner.
Well, absolutely. And thank you, Rebecca, for inviting us here tonight. And I want to thank all the guys for coming out tonight, and the women as well. But this isn't always easy. Men aren't taught to have these sorts of conversations. We're not taught to show vulnerability, and we're taught to be doers. We're taught to be fixers. And oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation where we can't necessarily fix it, right? That was Jeremy was talking about that before. Um, and so, the mission of Men for
All
move
right.
men.
Oh, Ben, we lost you for a second. Do you want to go
Oh, I'm
back and talk
sorry.
about the mission? That's okay. You froze. And if it
No
happens
problem.
again, I'm going to pick on Michael with the Men for Choice in the background, or AJ.
Yep, I'm sure they could pick up where I leave off. They're both know what they're doing. But so our the mission of Men for Choice is to educate, activate, and mobilize men to be better allies and advocates in the fight for bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. And that absolutely includes IVF. Because when the government makes a decision about what you can and can't do medically or with your body, that takes choice away from you. We like to think of it, Men for Choice. Both in a heterosexual relationship, both a man and a woman have stake in a reproductive decision. It's about 51-49, right? There's a clear majority there. But you have now we find that there are really four barriers that prevent men from getting involved, right? The first is the average man walking down the street, and this room is obviously different because we have lived experiences that have brought this to our attention. But most men don't understand the kind of harm that bans on reproductive rights in general, including IVF, um, have on women, right? And have on families, and have on people trying to create families. The second bit is that men see reproductive rights in general as a quote unquote women's issue, right? Meaning it's not their issue and it's not their place, right? One of the things you hear quite often is no uterus, no opinion. Well, in a perfect world, maybe. But many of the opponents of IVF and other medical things covered under reproductive rights uh, they're not quiet about it at all, right? And so we have a duty to speak up and to support the women, both interpersonally that we love, as well as support the community as a whole by being advocates for this. The third thing that men have trouble with is, we don't often see an easy entry point to this kind of advocacy, right? If you want to go out and be an advocate for IVF and reproductive rights as a man, there's not always an obvious choice. Now there's great organizations like Resolve and others, um, but the average guy doesn't know about that, right? And they need to be they need to be brought to it. And the fourth major barrier that men have to getting involved in this is that most men don't know what to do or how to advocate, and they need a playbook to do it, right? And that's largely what Men for Choice exists to do. We teach men how to be better allies and advocates. We largely do that through a 10-week fellowship program, but also through ongoing educational events, social events, outreach events, and other ways. Because one of the things that we found is, unfortunately, there are some men that, well, let me rephrase that. Some men hear better when a man is talking, and that is unfortunate. But while that is the case, and many of those men are legislators and people in positions of power, that means that we need men speaking up in favor of these issues and doing so, in an impassioned and effective way. So that's largely the mission of Men for Choice. Um, so thank you for the question, Rebecca.
Thank you. So I think now, you talked a little bit about the four barriers, Ben. And so what does getting involved look like on a bigger scale and a smaller scale?
Sure.
And then I want to hear from our panelists about things that they've done personally, big and small, that felt like advocacy and had an impact.
Absolutely. So, let's start with small because everything that we do in advocacy involves talking to people, sharing something about ourselves or about our experience, and helping them understand the way we see the world in the hopes that they will take an action that we want to pass a piece of legislation, something like that, right? And so, from a small scale, these are things you can do. First of all, the person that you need to be the biggest advocate for is your partner, right? I think all the guys here would agree with that. That's your first priority. But you also, yeah, have an obligation to, larger community, larger society, to make it a better place so that other people don't have to go through that same struggle that you went through. And some of the ways that you can do that, like I said, on a smaller scale, amplify messages on social media. Help to normalize amongst men that you know and talk to, talking about things like IVF and why it's important and why banning it is fundamentally an anti-family thing that, destroys dreams, right? These are all important for people to hear from people they know. Everybody's getting bombarded with advertising and AI slop and commercials, and everybody's got an agenda. But people that you know and trust in your real life talking to you about something that matters to them is, we have social science data to prove it, is the most effective way to convince somebody of anything like this. So even just in your day to day, right, talking to people that normalize this conversation and make sure they know how you feel. And the strongest way to do that, and we heard that from these gentlemen tonight, is to tell them your story because they'll see themselves in that because they're people too. A story beats a million statistics or a million policy experts, right? Which Cody, being a policy expert, knowing that, still led with his story, right? Um, So that's something you can do. On a larger level, you can become a more, outspoken and public advocate. That can mean lobbying your state or federal officials. That can mean joining and participating in some of the awesome actions and events that groups like Resolve put together to help support the issue. Um, but honestly, the most important thing you can do as a man in this movement, because there are so few of us, unfortunately, is to be a bridge to other men to get involved, right? A lot of times when I ask somebody if they want to come to a repro rights event with me, they go, "Oh, are we going to be the only guys there?" Right? And if the answer is no, they feel a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, we call that in communications world social proof, right? So,
Yes.
the three guys, that share their story tonight, you are now entering the world of social proof. You're proving that men share their stories. Like I see our friend Ryan is on tonight. He's a master at sharing his story, and that immediately breaks down a barrier or someone else's worry that they are the only ones. So that's great, Ben. Thanks.
Thank you.
Joe, talk a little bit about how I know, first of all, I think between William running a nonprofit and Joe being a policy expert, I want you guys to know you don't have to do either of those to do advocacy. So we're gonna start there with a disclaimer. But Joe, I love how you talk about what was that switch for you, minus your background aside of why you were like, I need to start getting involved.
Yeah, I think for me, it honestly, and I was talking about this at the Advocacy Day earlier this week, it came from a selfish place. It was a need for me to try to take control of a situation that we have very little control over. Talking about and talking through the difficulties of the journey was therapeutic for me. And I found resolve actually because the therapist that my wife was seeing quite often um, when I would come to occasionally therapy sessions with her, she realized very quickly that I was not exactly the kind of guy who was doing well with therapy. Didn't like sitting on a couch, didn't like talking about those feelings. She thought that I would be more well equipped and more passionate about trying to lend my voice to others. And she told me about Resolve, and she knew my background as someone who was involved in the policy space in DC and thought it could be good for me. And she was right. I found a community of people who were able to understand what we were going through, to understand what it's like to be a spouse trying to support their partner going through an incredibly difficult situation, trying to make decisions that seem impossible as you go through that process, where there are really no good answers as you go through that process. And one of the things that I like to talk about is, advocacy doesn't have to be policy expert, doesn't have to be a nonprofit, doesn't have to be starting your own business or other thing like that. It can be incredibly small and it can be just you and your spouse talking to your doctor, advocating for yourself is absolutely advocacy. You would be surprised in how many physicians, how many doctors, nurses, clinicians aren't aware of the resources that are available to others. So promoting those to them. If you are at a clinic, if you're talking with a urologist, if your wife is talking to an OBGYN or others, tell them about Resolve, tell them about support groups, tell them about those resources available. That is advocacy. That is getting out there. If you don't want to share your message publicly on social media, you can do things privately. Resolve has a Resolve Advocacy Network available for you to be able to email message lawmakers in an incredibly easy way. They send you the email and you type in your name, zip code, etc. They will write a letter to Congress for you. That is advocacy, and it only takes you about 30 seconds to do so, but it directly reaches legislative representatives and can have an impact. They see their constituents care about these issues. Advocacy can be talking with your friends and family about it. When we started to open up about our journey, the number of people who came to me and said that they were dealing with something similar and they had no idea was staggering. The number of men of my friends, I had very close friends who had been going through IVF for almost a year, and I had no idea, and they had no idea we were going through it also. So that became an instantaneous bond to be able to share and talk about that, all because we started to talk about it. Now, not everyone will ever reach that point, and that is completely okay. And I always say also, if you're going to talk about your journey, it is really important that you and your spouse or partner are on the same page about that because it's not just your story, it is someone else's story as well. So being on the same page with them and sharing very intimate details is incredibly overwhelming, but it can be powerful also.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you. William, what in the PCOS community, do you also see kind of men holding back from the advocacy work, or have you guys at PCOS Challenge seen a little bit more involvement?
We definitely have seen more involvement, but I just kind of want to circle back
Yeah.
to Ben because I think he really did a brilliant job of laying things out. So I'm also kind of a systems guy and an infrastructure guy, and um, in order to really create those entry points for people, and again, there are various entry points, as Joe mentioned, from advocating with your doctor to sharing your story with a legislator to starting organizations and things like there are various ranges for that, but a lot of people don't know how to start. And literally with PCOS Challenge, we were blazing trails every day. We had no idea how to do advocacy. We learned, a lot from Resolve on how to do this work. So I want to just say, one of the best things that you can do is look for an organization um, like Resolve, like Ms. Choice, that do have some infrastructure already, that do have playbooks. At PCOS Challenge, we have storytelling templates, which will show you how to effectively tell your story in different settings. So again, there are a lot of reasons that people don't start is that I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, and organizations can give you a lot of that. But also, Ben made another great point, which was when you're in these meetings, again, I've been doing this for almost a decade in the meetings. Yes, there may be some young male staffers that when they see another young, a male or male, that they're going to relate to that story a little differently. Like for us, we start talking about an ovary, like they're tuning out. Those staffers are tuning out. But if it's a male, unfortunately, in front of them that's saying something that's like, okay, I get it now. I understand. And there's so many legislators who have opinions that are just again kind of uninformed, or they are focused on something completely different. But when you say, you know, we know you're pro family because no legislator is going to say they're anti family. So when you go in and you say, this is about pro family, you're able to establish that rapport. So you start to learn some of the language, you start to learn some of the tools, you start to get plugged into the opportunities that organizations can create. But one of the other things that I do want to also bring up is around a lot of people think that advocacy is about getting a bill passed, but there are a lot of policy levers and there are a lot of opportunities for you engaged and do advocacy, even workplace advocacy. And again, your organization like Resolve will have resources that you can advocate in those different places. So one of the best things you can do is to show up to an organization and just say, "How can I help?" And then they will help you plug in. They'll kind of inventory some skills and some assets and relationships. But also, like Joe said, is continuing to talk to other people that you know to raise that awareness, invite them to events, and you'll just be surprised at how much this will grow.
Awesome. Jeremy, what has kind of surprised you the most about when you started sharing your story? Um, Feedback or reactions? What's kind of surprised you there?
I just think, yeah, I think people have said it. Just you don't know how many people are going through it. Just people don't talk about it, and that's why I definitely wanted to try to share our story. And I did. I like the point about it is not just my story; it's my wife's story. So making sure that she's on the same page of wanting to like talk about this, and she we're on the we agree on we want people to if they want to ask questions, we want to help however we can. So I think I was most surprised, but how many people are going through it, and yeah.
Do you see any difference like year one, year two of people like coming back, or um did it grow, meaning different people sought you guys out to get that kind of connection?
So the tough part about like golf outings or
Mm.
just with people on going on vacations, and we definitely saw a dip in attendance. But I mean, because we sent out feedback like flyers to all of our players, and like all the feedback was amazing. So there were definitely less people because of that. But overall, I mean, we still this year we raised like a little over $10,000. So still,
Amazing.
yeah. So we're still definitely happy. We're gonna do it again on year three. I just think, yeah, it can be tough. With just people being on vacations and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's a little cold in Ohio in April. Yeah, that weather can definitely play a factor. We're looking at different potential weekends next year, moving it back, and hopefully that'll have an impact. But we still had a good turnout of sponsorship too.
Yeah. Every once in a while, National Infertility Awareness Week overlaps with all the things we don't want it to, like Easter and Passover. And this was one of those years. So, but thank you.
Mhm.
Um, so Ben, what do you are hoping that a new advocate that's on a call takes away? Like what would be the one thing you'd want them to take away tonight?
One thing I want them to take away tonight is that you absolutely have a place in the movement. You have power to help make the world a better place, both for the people that you love and for millions of other people like them all across the country, across your state. And you can do those in small ways that we discussed, or you can do them in big ways. And if you're ever interested in learning how to do that, you know, come check out Men for Choice. We exist to train men to be better allies and advocates.
Awesome. Same question for the panelists. It's one, I'll start with William.
Okay.
One thing you want to give hope that someone takes away, and then we're going to open it for questions. So if you got questions, start
Sure.
thinking about it.
Well, one thing I'll just talk about, like at a congressional level, like realize that when you're in that office, you're in essence representing tens of thousands of constituents. I don't mean that in a scary way, but like your story is not uncommon. And what you provide is and particularly if you, and I'd also encourage you, get your physicians to join an advocacy day or to come with you. And you'd be surprised at how many will, is that um, they provide again the scope that this is not limited to one person's story, and but also the hope that something better can be done with that legislator's support or whoever you happen to be in front of. So just know advocacy is something transformative. It will change your life. And just do that first event, and you will feel like a pro after that event, and you can't wait for the next one. So you will be hooked when you do it, and you will be surprised at the impact and the sense of empowerment because there's some things you may not feel you have the power to change right now, but this is one thing that you can channel some of that energy and help really bring additional resources to the community and advocate for yourself and your partner. So thank you.
Thanks,
If I
William.
could just add
Jeremy?
to that really
Oh,
quickly.
sure.
So you're absolutely so I've worked in government for a long time, and they know that if one person calls or shows up, that one person, depending on the size of the district, represents anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 people that feel the same way, but aren't going to call their member of Congress about it, right? If you have five people walk into a legislator's office and demand to talk to them about an issue, they're going to have to, that's going to be an item in that week's staff meeting. If you have 10 people that show up twice, that will become its own emergency meeting. If you have 15 people that show up three times, that will become that office's top priority. It doesn't take an army to do it. You can do it with a fairly small group of people. And again, it's about telling your story. They can argue with you about policy. They can argue with you about politics. They can't argue with you about your story and your heart and your love. So just wanted to add that. Sorry.
I love that, Ben. Jeremy, Joe, you guys want to jump in with any last minute wishes for the audience and we'll open up questions?
Yeah, I would just say throughout this entire process, the communication with my wife is what my biggest takeaway, and what I would just make your partner just always be talking to them, having communication. Um, this process was obviously it was very tough, but it made my marriage a lot stronger. And if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And shout out to my wife; she's the greatest. So just yeah, be there for your partner. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think I would say that there is no right or wrong way to start advocating, and there's no step that's too big or too small to go about doing this. Everyone has their own ways of doing this, and it often takes time to feel out what is the right way. It could be really small starting thing, it could be massive. You could decide to start a golf tournament and raise a bunch of money and make a huge impact, and that be your entryway into the world. Or it can be you attend a meeting virtually, or you sign an email, or you do a social media post, or you like a post from Resolve and reshare that on your social network. All of those are steps forward in advocacy. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But as so many people have said here, advocacy and telling your story is absolutely the way so many of us have been able to try to deal with the trauma, the impact that infertility has on you as a male, but also in dealing with your the relationship with your spouse and the community at large. It's really hard to see other people having babies, whether it's family members or friends, etc., coworkers, when you're going through that process, when you think you're the only one who isn't dealing with that. But when you go through and talk with all these other people, you see that that is not the case and that others are there alongside you. So the biggest and the hardest thing is to take that first step. But once you do, you absolutely do realize the impact that it can have on you as an individual and also the community at large.
Thanks, Joe. Um, before because I still want you guys thinking about your questions or your comments. Marnie, I know you've been doing awesome in the chat. Could you put a link to our resources? We have a page of resources just for men. Um, and so I want you guys to make sure you have access to that. There's educational resources, support resources. And then Marnie's posted a couple times the month of action link. We had a great session, virtual session at the beginning of the month about how to tell your story, and we recorded that, and that's on the website. So if you're like wondering, gee, how do I tell my story? I mean, these guys did an amazing job, but you can get some tips from that webinar as well if you're getting ready to kind of put yourself out there. But at this time, if someone has a question or a comment, I'd love to hear from others. To unmute yourself, introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, and we'll answer your questions. And if it's more comfortable, put it in the chat. We're there too.
Well, I am happy to ask the panel question because this has been very interesting. How do you think that the men in your life view your advocacy, like from before they knew you to now? Like, I notice in my own personal journey that, like, not that they turn off, but there are some men that just like shrug and, disengage. Some men really connect and can gravitate and resonate with that message, but there is that sense of like disconnect for sure. And how do you approach that?
I'll go ahead and get started. I think it's a great question, Michael, and it's hard. It's one of the fears that everyone has, I think, when you start to share your story, that by doing so, one, you're exposing something about yourself or your relationship with your partner and spouse that is shameful, or something that, is something that you just no one else knows what it's about, etc. And there are some people, especially in today's social media age, where there are keyboard warriors who love to talk and love to say mean, awful things to you. And if you are public about your story, that will probably happen, unfortunately, to you. But I would say that for as many as times that happens, the number of men in my life who have, one, understood and appreciated the effort that I and others have in sharing their story and the impact that they have, that outweighs all of it. Knowing that, my wife's father is incredibly grateful for all the stuff that we've been able to try to do. My father says the same thing to me. I was just having my best friend, who's a St. Louis police officer, was actually here in DC for Police Week this week, and we were talking about all the advocacy work that I've been doing. And he was saying, he's like, I'm really proud of you because I feel like you're changing the world. And I was like, well, you're a police officer. You literally are protecting and serving people. What I am doing is nothing compared to that. And he was, trying to say, no, we all have our impact in different ways. So I think that for that, it's something that you understand may happen, but the greater impact that you can have on the community at large and the impact you can have on yourself greatly outweighs that. And it does take something to get over that. And it's scary. It is, and I cannot discredit that at all. It's a real thing that you will face, but know that there are so many other men and women who will come after us who are incredibly grateful for all of the work that is being done here today that outweighs all of that, in my opinion.
And I'll just chime in on that too. So again, every kind of community and group of men is going to be a little different. And I will say, so for some of you, um, they will recognize you as a person of character and they will appreciate that. And they will be willing to come up and talk to you and say, I haven't talked to anybody about this, but I'm going through this too. So you'll have some of that. You might have some of the other extreme, but again, you really want to come back to consistency that this is about being pro family, and very few people are going to say that they're anti family. So if you bring it back to something that is consistent with just values that they likely share. Most people likely share the values of family. I think you'll start to see less resistance around that. Now, again, they may conflate issues, and that's a whole other thing. But for the most part, I would encourage you just to center it on being pro family, and a lot of people will be able to relate to that.
Yeah, I think, to add to that, um, you know, I don't think any couple, when they were trying to conceive, sat down and said, before we make this decision, we should really check in with our state legislator, see what they have to say about this. Maybe there's a county board commissioner whose expertise we need to weigh in. No, that's ridiculous, right? That's a decision that should be made between the two people involved and their doctor, right? And I think that it's uh, that's another message I think that men appeal to. Because one of the hard parts about it, I've heard some of you guys even say this, is that we feel that we want to do something about it, right? And the inability to directly attack the problem, right? The inability to directly work towards a solution yourself can be incredibly frustrating and disempowering, right? Um, and that's where advocacy really comes in. That's where you can really regain that power through active action. Um, by, like I said, or organizing other men, being an advocate online, and to Joe's point, you will get some people that say nasty things. You'll get some people that are really supportive. You'll get a lot of spam ads too. But you can choose what you look at, choose what you pay attention to, and choose sort of what you let into your mind in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, all the men in my life have been wonderful. Um, and if anybody would ever be negative, I was raised to not care what other people think. I know it's not, it's always easy to do that, but I know that I'm trying to help out, make a difference, and I care about this. So I try not to worry about that stuff. But yeah, the men in my life have been overwhelmingly supportive, which makes a huge difference. So.
Awesome. Anybody else questions or comments? And we'll
Kyle Harmon from Middletown, Rhode Island. New to the space, and actually, I guess I walked right into a massive event. I met
yeah.
any of you guys down in DC. I was invited down there, and it was incredible. And more to say than I actually have time for. But basically, my question is, how do you find people who are willing to speak? I don't really understand yet. I have some ideas in my head, how are you finding people who actually want to do this, other than just posting, going to any kind of meetings and saying, who wants to talk about this? Write your name down anonymously, and here's my email, and talk to me about it later, because you don't know how to share this without actually overwhelming yourself, the people around you, anyone else. I just was curious how you actually find people who want to be involved.
You know, I've got oh, sorry, doctor,
No,
you go
go
first.
for it. Go for it.
And so, my favorite example of this is there's a guy named Derek Cook. Derek and his wife Anya live in Florida. It was a little bit of a different situation where she had a complication with her pregnancy, and they couldn't get access to the care that they needed because of some goofy state laws. And she almost died. She went into sepsis, right? He almost lost his wife because of a stupid state regulation, right? And his wife was speaking at a conference, and he was there to support her, but didn't know what else to do other than, you support your partner, right? And Anya came up to us after she saw we had a little booth. She came up to us and said, my husband Derek is like beside himself right now. He really wants to do something, but he doesn't know what to do. He's a man because he's a man. Can you help him? And this is mostly Derek and not us, to be clear, but Derek has made incredible strides as an advocate. He's been interviewed on dozens of television stations at this point. We gave him sort of some training and helped him walk through some of his, it's a little daunting, right? So there's some confidence issues that any normal guy would have there. And at this point, he's become, a very confident and comfortable advocate. Now that's on a big scale, right? Frankly, on a smaller scale, that's what we produce in our fellowship, right? We teach men how to talk about this and where to.
And I'll just add on. So, Kyle, one of the easier ways is to go to places where there are a lot of people already. So whether it's let's say a faith-based organization but any place where there's already a large gathering of people, statistically you're gonna find some people who will relate to it and want to be involved. Your other option is to connect around places where people are already dealing with the issue. So those are going to be two of the easier places to go to find people and to sustain a group, because the other part is being able to sustain it. Like you can do kind of a one-off, kind of group, but if you really want to sustain it, you generally, in my experience, is you want to be someplace where people are already gathering on a regular basis.
I would also add, these are all fantastic things, that one, it is important to find or to tell your story because everyone's story is different and that you need to make it relatable to other people. I have no idea what it is like for other individuals who have gone through their journey. I am a cis, married, straight, white male in the Washington, D.C. area who has incredible access and privilege and all these other things. I don't know what it's like to be a gay man who is working with his partner to try to do this. I don't know what it's like to be an African American trying to deal with all the prejudice and all these other stuff that exists in this healthcare system. I don't know what it's like to be a veteran who has a service-related injury and trying to navigate those things. But the more of us who tell our stories, you will find someone who they can relate to that. And then two, make it accessible and easy for them. We shouldn't be saying that everyone then needs to come to Washington, D.C. and spend thousands of dollars to advocate and stuff like that. We need to make it easy for them to tell their story. So tell your story and find people who look and sound like you, because odds are there will be someone who you talk to who says, oh, you know what? I get that. It resonates with me in some way. And then two, make it easy for them to take that step so that they can share their story also.
And one more thing I also wanted to add on is that um, other things that you can do is that if there's a group like Resolve or Men for Choice, and you already are in a group in a large group. You can invite speakers from these different organizations to do like a lunch and learn or to do some, webinar or something like that. And that can kick things off and then you can continue from there. So that's another way in which you can keep things going.
Awesome, Kyle. Thanks for the question. And it was so great to meet you last week. You did, and you splashed right in, but I can tell you after doing this for so long, advocacy is a ripple effect. And you guys just being here have started a ripple in your own lives, in your own communities, I have no doubt. So thank you. So this is your space. This is your community. This is your moment. I want to thank everybody for being here, all the panelists. So grateful for your time and your passion and your vulnerability. This is definitely just the beginning of conversations like this as we welcome more men into the advocacy part of what Resolve does. So thank you. And this recording will be available in a couple days, and we will get it out to those that had RSVP'd and missed tonight because it's an important conversation. And the first thing you could do is share it with others. So thank you to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful night and look forward to continuing our month of action.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.